I'm the artistic director of Supra Infinite Gallery in Bucharest. I'm very honored to moderate this discussion and to have Oleksandra here with us today for the live discussion. And thank you so much, Oleksandra, for taking the time. We know you are very, very busy. So we really, really appreciate your presence here. But before briefly introducing Oleksandra, I would like to say a few words about our larger project, which is called Becoming After Ruin. It is a project that Supra Infinite Gallery is organizing in partnership with the Museum of Recent Art and also the Odessa Fine Arts Museum in Ukraine. Becoming After Ruin is a project that approaches ruins, rebirth and conservation from multiple perspectives and disciplines. And basically the aim is to bring forth the importance of topics such as re-emergence and how can we do things together more collectively, and idea of becoming in the context of current context of war, and applying this through arts, because arts is a very good tool to tackle these topics. So the project also brings forth wartime damage to heritage and the environment, rebuilding urban imaginaries as a method of resilience in Europe's peripheral cities. The project aims to engage the public in a dialogue on the role of socially and environmentally sensitive imagination in processes of reconstruction. So the topic of reconstruction is very important, and of course to bring visibility of Ukrainian artists in Romania. Yesterday we had the opening of two exhibitions at our gallery on Mântuleasa Street 22. We present two artists, Vitaly Yankovi, that is also present here with an installation in the vitrine of the gallery, and Daria Koltsova in the larger space of the gallery, both having different approaches to ideas of landscape, be it urban landscape, natural landscape. So please come to visit. They are open until end of October, beginning of November. And now I would like to introduce very briefly our guest, Oleksandra Kovalchuk, the Deputy Director of Odessa Fine Arts Museum and co-founder of Museum for Change in 2017. Since the onset of the full-scale invasion by the Russian Federation in Ukraine, the NGO that Oleksandra has co-founded, Museum for Change, has focused on supporting Ukrainian cultural institutions in preserving their collections and supporting their teams during the war, having successfully provided support to more than 60 such institutions across several regions in Ukraine. So today Oleksandra will walk us through her presentation and the current situation of museum workers in Ukraine and the challenges regarding conservation, as well as the efforts to build these international networks. I'll keep it. I'll end it here. Thank you so much. Maybe we start. Is it okay?
Să întrebăm dacă e cineva care nu vorbește.
Da, putem.
Eu traduc cu drag ce s-a zis până acum. Dacă...
E nevoie de...
No? Ah, okay. So, O să vedem pe parcurs dacă e nevoie. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Christina. Thank you for the introduction and for the invitation. It's my first time in Bucharest, actually, and I'm already really disappointed that it's only one day. And like I opened the map and I saw the museum, so I'm very interested to see more, and there is no time, so I definitely want to come back. So, briefly about our museum, and with the Odessa National Fine Arts Museum, you can get a picture of what any museum is thinking about, is worried about, and how we're working during the war. But at the same time, we're one of the most successful and protected institutions with a circle of donors, with very strong networking. So it is I would say that it's one of the best situations. That is why we're trying to empower and support our colleagues in other museums. So let's start with February 24th. That's one of the rooms of the museums, and over here you can see the windows that very fast we've started to apply scotch with the crosses. It actually doesn't give any protection. So that is how Daria Kaltsova, that is now present, you can see her exhibition, and when she saw that crosses on windows, it pushed her to her idea of making stained glass windows installations, and that is how it all connected. Little later in the war, these windows would be blown away by the blast wave, and right now that is working on a concept of a stained glass window that will make us remember about this blast, the first blast in our history, and it will stay there forever as a way of memorizing the experience of war. First couple of weeks and first day, we nearly took off all of the exposition of the museum, 1,500 pieces of art at about 24 hours. Very soon we have packed everything, and we've tried to make it safer, which is kind of hard. Anywhere in Ukraine, you know, the missiles, they go all over Ukraine, so there is no safe spot. And very fast we started helping our colleagues, buying crates for other museums in Odessa, and so on. And then in about a month, we started thinking about our community. It was already clear that Odessa will not be occupied, because there was a risk that it will get under the Russian occupation. Then in about a month, it was already clear that it will not, that they will not move forward. And that's when we started thinking about our community, about people who stayed in Odessa, about people who continued their life in the city, and about us, who we are. We don't have collection anymore, we don't have exposition anymore, we have empty walls. So who are we? What are we? And we've started from exhibitions through the empty museum, through the empty walls, empty frames from the artworks. And some larger and heavier artworks stayed in the museum because, well, it was hard. Whatever was harder to move away, it stayed there. So we started walking around and discussing it and thinking about our past of our museum, experience of our museum during the World War II. And some large-scale works that stayed in the museum by coincidence happened to be works of art connected with the Russian Empire, because and with Soviet Union, which is also an empire. Empires like big things to speak about themselves. So it was a good chance for us to think about that, to process, to discuss it with our visitors. And then we started thinking about exhibitions and about contemporary artists who happened to be extremely productive in these first months of war. trying to feel and to work through their artworks, what we all were going through. And we've opened first exhibitions in the museum. We've started making public discussions in the museum. We started making artist talks in the museum and helping both artists and our community members to go through this hard time. And we had multiple projects in our museum, about 36 only last year. And any museum in the world is struggling because they don't have space. As any gallery, I'm sure you will never have enough space to do enough exhibitions and to show our collection. And then for first time in decades, after World War II, we had an empty museum. So we basically had multiple spaces for multiple shows over there. And we used that opportunity. We are really exhausted by this time. Our team is extremely nearly dead. But it was very important for the artistic community, and it was it was more than Ukrainian Museums had of contemporary artists in the last 10 years. We did it in just 1 year, so it had a very interesting impact. Then we thought about the colonization, the imperialization, which is still a very big topic in our cities, and it will stay strong for another decades. It's a long process, and there's a lot of work over there. One of the first big problems in our communities was the statue of Catherine II in Odessa Central Square. We have over here the artwork with her on the day of evacuation. And eventually our museum suggested, when there was a public discussion, so should we get rid of the monument or should we keep it and rethink it and what should we do with it? We said that, okay, let's just take it to our museum and let's invite artists, invite curators, and try to rethink it in an artistic way. We still haven't done that. We just have not enough time or resources, but we will definitely do that. And that's how Catherine II happened to start living in our yard. Then there was a series of impacts by blast waves. Basically, there were 4, and we've been fixing with the support of international organizations. Then we've closed all of our facade with the shields and tried to make the museum as safe as possible. And preservation of the collection. Our collection is 11,000 of objects. For some Ukrainian museums, it's 30,000 objects. For some Ukrainian museums, it's 300,000 objects. So in total in Ukraine, we have about 12 million objects in only state-owned museums. And now we know how much time approximately it takes to wrap up the collection, how to wrap it in the right way to store it for 10 years in inappropriate conditions and things like that. And one of the things that we had to, and we didn't before, we decided we need to create a digital archive, a digital collection, even not in the best quality, but at least to make it available to everyone in the country, outside the country. And actually digital is the only way to preserve it in the long term. Any Ukrainian museum can be destroyed like this any night. And that's the only thing that can survive Russian bombs, drones, and missiles that are flying all over. We constantly evacuate. 11,000 objects, it is one portion of evacuation takes about 3 to 4 months. to dedust the artworks, to prepare to pack them in the right way, to plan the logistics and everything. So we're constantly doing that, and we're somewhere near the middle of this process. So it is an ongoing process for the museum. We also try to have as much projects outside of Ukraine as possible, as a way to both preserve our collection when it's on tour and the exhibition outside of the country, at least some couple of works. It's all like children, they're all unique, so we're trying to, it's good when we have at least 50 works somewhere in the exhibition. But it's not very easy because all of the institutions normally have plans for like 5-7 years. And we understand that, but we're really trying to do more. And we do international exhibitions and things like that. Then, how do we speak about war in 50 years? Right now, Ukrainian artists are pretty popular. We have some exhibitions outside of the country, in Europe and around the world. And we see how their art is already acquired by some museums in Europe, by some private collectors. But then if this is all purchased somewhere outside of Ukraine, what will stay in Ukraine? How will we speak about war in our museum and in other museums of Ukraine when it is all over, when it is the best that no one already remembers? And that is why one of our ambitions is to collect a huge and best collection of contemporary art. That is some of the acquisitions that we did during the... And we already acquired about 200 artworks, which is already one of the biggest wartime collections in the country. On the 5th November, there was the biggest blast, the one that happened directly in the museums. This might be the big. Can we play the video? Find it real quick. Can we play the video? No? It's okay.
Okay.
No, we can skip it.
Putem să dăm la video?
So basically, this is our facade. The missile is going to explode right here. Like, this is the facade of the museum. This is where our workers are sitting usually. It happened during the night, happily, so there will be a huge hole pit over here. And we had, like, in a matter of minutes, we had all of our windows gone, all of our doors gone, just blown away with the blast wave. But we were very, 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 very happy because it was just a couple of meters closer to the building. On the video, we could see how from this blast, trees are starting to burn. So if it was closer to the building, I think the building would be just burned. So we were very happy with where it went. This is one of our exhibitions, and we had ceilings fallen in nearly every room. And that's how it was a disaster. But we started working, and we actually did an amazing job on documenting and overcoming the results of the blast. First of all, we did the documentation. We had the photographers documenting everything in the evening. In the morning, we followed the forensic protocols that are required by international court. For example, we had a couple of professional teams of architects who came and did the assessment and documented also what has happened as part of the well, as part of documents that we will need for the international court against Russia to document the damage that they did. And then we started putting together everything that was important. You see, it looks like a crime scene with the little plates everywhere, and we had specially skilled people like archaeologists, artists, historians, who understood what to do and how to collect part of the everything that is valuable. So that's how pieces of our museum are now stored. And this, for example, is the missile itself that we've been trying to collect from our yard also. So we have this kind of souvenirs. And then in 2 weeks, when we were done with all this, and it was cleaned, cleared, and we replaced windows with the shields, we started thinking about, okay, when should we open? How should we open? How should we open? What should we do? And our team, this is very important to realize, for them it was a very big stress. When you basically stop feeling safe at the place where you work. When this building, and when you physically feel how unsafe you are every day. But they managed to overcome it, and they said, okay, we need to reopen, it is important for our community, it will add to the resilience of our communities also, and it was close already to New Year's, so we've all reopened 6 weeks, only 6 weeks after the blast. And on December 15th, we have reopened the museum. This is how it looked. It wasn't safe to go under this portic, and this entrance was closed and blocked. And we've created a different entrance through actually it was the entrance to our restrooms. So to the right there are restrooms, and there was a door connected to the museum to the left. So we've made the reception over here. So we had to be creative all the time. And this is the 4 meters tree, 4 meters high tree in our in one of the rooms of the museum. And this is our small team. A really, really, really tiny team that worked on that, and people were super happy. They were making photos near the Christmas tree. They were very excited and happy to go to the museum, and it meant much more for them than it meant actually for the museum itself. And about the team reduced to only 33% of who was working before February 24th. A lot of people relocated to safer countries, and some people joined army. And that's how it is in any Ukrainian museums. In some Ukrainian museums now you have 1 person, director. In some you maybe have 5, and then you are lucky. This was only maybe less than a half of our team during the New Year's of 2021-2022. So 2 months before the invasion. We love Christmas trees, you see, like it's one of our things. And then we received a proposal from ELIF, International Fund, created specially for preserving artworks and collections during the crises, and they were ready to fund stabilization works. And then we had to ask ourselves, okay, they have like an envelope for Ukraine, $2 million, and out of this $2 million we will buy 150,000. How responsible is that? Maybe if we do this, maybe some other Ukrainian museum will not have an opportunity to use these funds to evacuate their collections. And what is more important, so in every decision you make, we constantly have to think about bigger picture, bigger than us, and evaluating every decision. But eventually, we've decided that Odessa is a very particularly important city with a lot of Russian propaganda still working inside, and that the museum that is working 100% is so extremely important for the communities. So we did the stabilization. This is our facade with the works, and now it is all covered in these things. And this is our administrator headquarters. During this time, since November, our team, which is about 15 people, is working in basically in 3 rooms all together, same as this room over here. So it's like with this table, here would sit 4 or 5 people working at the same time. So it's crazy, actually. It is very challenging to work when there is a lot of people in a very small space. And don't we now, this is our kind of meetings outside of this small apartment that is part of the museum also. And we would just go outside and sit on the street and discuss what we need to do. So, what are we doing as museums in Ukraine? We're basically preparing to disasters all the time, like constantly we need to prepare. We need to mitigate the results, the consequences of the disasters all the time. And we need to evacuate our collections constantly. It is ongoing. You cannot stop. It's hundreds, thousands, it's millions of objects of art and history. We are trying to serve our community as much as we can. We're trying to help people in our cities to become more resilient, to develop critical thinking, to take more responsibility over themselves, to reflect on the war from the artist's view. And contemporary artists, we want to give them an opportunity to connect to their audiences, to new audiences, and especially in the museums. I don't know how it is in Romania, but in Ukraine, museums are still very conservative, and there is a tension and disconnection normally between artists and museums, classical state-owned museums. So now this connection is growing really fast together, and it's amazing to see how it works, how it benefits everybody. And decolonization is one of the things where museums are playing a core role. Digitalization is a way to preserve our heritage, because we don't know how long it will continue, how many objects will be destroyed, and we lose objects constantly. We do grant writing all the time. We're already so exhausted with grant writing, so even it's very hard to explain, but we're getting less capable of doing that as time goes. We're getting more exhausted. We have mental health issues, and the longer war goes, the harder it is to do everything that is required by all of the reporting, all of this. Well, for anyone who is working with grants, especially state grants, it is a challenge. But when it is wartime, it is getting harder and harder. And we're losing people all the time. We're losing our colleagues. There is a huge martyr log, like a log of people from Ukrainian Museums who served in Ukrainian army, who died were killed in combat. And we're losing constantly more and more. And we're burning out. Yes, and everybody burns out from time to time. Burning out during war is a little bit different thing. But we continue this run, and we know that museums are in the core in the core of our future, and it is very important for us to be a healthy society when the war ends, a long time after the war, with all of the post-trauma and other social problems that war brings. So museums are very important for Ukrainian people. So thank you. That would be it. I will be happy to reply some specific questions about our museum or other museums or geopolitics, weapons, I don't know, armors, risk assessment.
Thank you so much, Oleksandra. I think it's a very intimate format, so I think if you have questions, we can just open it up to you. What is the current project at the moment? What is are you preparing? Continue preparing exhibitions in the museum, and at the same time.
We have just switched to a new format from opening an exhibition every month, but it's like in different spaces of the museum. We have 26 rooms, and one project can take from one room to, let's say, 3, 4, 5 rooms. So it's a constant, like a puzzle, and you need to rethink what is happening and which projects are going on. So now we're moving to a format of opening 4 or 5 projects at the same time in different rooms of the museum. And for example, we have right now, we're an art museum. Our collection is mostly paintings, graphic works, and sculpture from 16th century to contemporary times. And but right now we have 2 exhibitions that would have never happened in our museum. One belongs to a very important person from Odessa community. He owned the place where he grew the plants and trees, etc., for landscaping and things like that. He joined the army, he was a captain, and he passed away a year ago. He was killed in action. And between the combats, he used to do small aquarelle paintings of flowers that he saw there in Donbass, on the battle line. And he would draw those flowers, something that he was passionate through all of his life. And this is not like amazing artworks that we would, as a museum, we would say, okay, this is something extremely important. No, it was like a hobby. But we had this exhibition as a way to help remember him, to honor his memory, and to help his friends to stay connected with him and to live through this loss. And another one is Maxim Krivtsov. He was one of the most brilliant poets, and he was serving in the army. And he died, he was killed about maybe 6 months ago. And he was a photographer, but also it was like a hobby for him. He was a poet mostly, and he served the army. How it all can be connected, it's crazy. And we have an exhibition of his photos. These photos also, I doubt we would have done it. It's not like he's not a brilliant photographer, and we are an art museum. But it was an unspeakable pain for our people, because we had so many poets, writers, artists killed by Soviet Union in the end of 30s, during World War II, after World War II, and even in 80s. I was born on 1984, and that's the year when Vasil Stus, one of the prominent Ukrainian poets and writers, was killed in concentration camp, basically. in labor time, and that is why it is like an ongoing, continuing history of killing intellectuals, of killing people that shape culture and identity. And his poems are incredible, and one of the things he would say, when they ask me what the war means, I will say that it's the names, and then it's 3 dots, and you can make a set of the names of your friends and family, of those who served, who died, and any war is people that are ready to sacrifice their life to protect the others. And and it's an incredible pain. And another thing about him and Daria Katsova, one of the things that you can see at the exhibition is black sunflowers. And there is one photo that Maxim made. It was a field of sunflowers that are already ripe, they are already just black seeds over there, no yellow. Just like Daria's works, they're black. And there was a story when there was an artillery shooting of their positions, and he and his comrades hid it under the sunflowers, which was, sunflowers cannot protect you from rockets and missiles. And he said, he called this picture, drown me in the infinite field of sunflowers. And that's what I was also thinking when I saw Daria's sunflowers at this exhibition. Yeah, so that's how we have to work every day.
Oh, Alexandra, one question. I'm Sylvia. I work in a museum here, which is closed for restoration. I'm curious, how many visitors do you have in a month, on average?
Well, right now we have about 2,000. Well, that's not much. We used to have much more, about 5.
And you said that the museum collection includes many Russian artists.
Yes.
Yes, I think it.
Yes.
And did you think about what to do all this?
Yes, of course.
The reopening?
Of course. That's a big.
It's difficult.
It is. Well, it is difficult, but not it is difficult for any museum in the world, because the world is. We are either we've been colonizers, or we've been colonized, or we've been allies of Nazis, or we were victims of Nazis, or we were or our in the past our predecessors committed genocide to some other groups, or we were part of those groups. So it is a very big topic everywhere. And one of the things that we can use is that we can use the best practices that already exist. We can avoid some mistakes that other countries, nations, museums did, and we also can invent something new, something on our own. And there is a lot of rethinking that is happening right now among intellectuals in Ukraine. And well, definitely, it's not the art itself and the artists itself. It's their space in our history and in our future, and it's about education. Basically, we have any art in our museum. Before the full-scale invasion, in Odessa, our museum was mostly Ukrainian place, where we had a lot of everything on Ukrainian history, art history, all of the executed Ukrainian artists, and we were really a center of pro-Ukrainian center. And there was also always the Russian politicians and people with a pro-Russian set of mind. And even though we had Catherine II, even though we had Stalin in the museum, and that is something that we could do. You will not see Hitler in German museums, I guess. It's too kind of traumatic. But in our museum we had Stalin because of our history. The way there was no consensus inside the country, inside society, that Stalin is as bad as Hitler. And we had to go through that. We had to show him and to set his place in our history. And how can we explain that some artists were executed physically if we do not show him? And it was one of his ideas of social realism and something that your country also went through during the Soviet occupation.
So you said all your patrimony is packed, isn't it? Nothing is exhibited. But if I were you, I would exhibit one item per month, one from the patrimony. And do like an opening just for one item.
There some museums in Kiev, they do 1 day. They do 1 day exhibition of one work. 1 day they prepare a small intro to the work, and they do like every hour they give the intro. Their guides speak about the art.
For the people not to forget.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is very important. And for us, it's been 2.5 years. Well, charity act, but still a lot of people in museums, in academical circles, think that this is a charity act, that Ukrainian art is unknown. That is why there is this concept that it is less interesting or exciting or less like that it is a folk art, like it is just some vyshyvanka, some folk art, some naive art, that there was only village culture in Ukraine, which is part of Russian narrative. They've built it to make sure that people think that Russian culture is big, and Ukrainian, Georgian, Belarusian cultures are not urban cultures, but village cultures. And they worked with that for hundreds of years. So it's very hard to break through this, and while our exhibitions are pretty exciting, actually, it's an interesting thing.
I'm curious if you are developing any new programs to train young people in preserving the cultural heritage.
Well, right now we're going to hire 15 people to the team, yes, and we want to make a radical improvement of our outreach, and we will have a designated team because we see how there is a huge erosion of humanitarian knowledge scientists in Ukraine and in Odessa particularly. So we're trying to invent a way how to contribute to this process, how to encourage young people to choose this career over becoming IT and or logistics or other things. So we are going to launch that. And we're also, as Museum for Change, we're working on a book with the lessons learned methodology, and I don't want to be like I'm very optimistic, but last 3 years taught me, like I've learned hard way, that it is better to be ready for bad things. And for Romania, as let's say, if Ukraine falls, then Moldova will be taken over in really, really fast. It will be a matter of days. And then Romania is one of the Poland, one of the countries, and thinking about how you could be prepared for that is a good thing. So we're going to make an English version so we could share it with our colleagues, especially in this belt around us, in the high-risk countries, first line, I would say, countries, to use our experience to protect collections here.
All the works are stored in the museum?
Sorry, there was a question over
sorry,
here.
sorry.
Yeah, and then I will return.
You mentioned the occupied territories and people coming in from there. Well, I imagine that most museums, if not all, are there in occupied territories, have been destroyed. What's the state on trying to save some of the artifacts?
On occupied
Yes,
territories?
like taking them out in the last minute, I don't know.
Well, there were different stories. In some, there was already sabotage on the local, like we have series of stories when some local authority person responsible for museums in local authorities forbid director to evacuate while she had an opportunity. And then this particular person joined Russian occupation administration. And so sometimes it was like this. In mostly in these cities where they entered from Mariupol, it was impossible to move something from Kherson to Melitopol, all of this belt, like this path from Crimea to Russia. It was nearly impossible to evacuate. And there were a lot of moments where people would just put something in their car and take it out. But mostly there was no time for that. And it was also dangerous personally for people who work there. And it will be another very complicated topic, like our museum. And during the World War II, when Odessa was occupied by Romanian forces. And no offenses.
No.
I think that we are good already. One director of our museum, he was working with the Romanian administration and he made the inventory. So there was a narrative that he did good by collaborating because there was an inventory, but then when Romanian forces were retreating, he went to Romania with them and with the documentation. So it is still lost. And we think that it is still somewhere here in private, like there is an understanding that it's private ownership. But it's very hard to define. Sometimes you have to collaborate in order to save the collection, to do whatever you can to preserve it. But it is a very complicated topic. Some museums, like in Kherson, in Odessa, there was one director of the museum who was openly saying, I want to preserve the collection, to give it to Russians finally, because finally we are the archaeological museum and we will join the Russian Academy of Science, which is so great. So in some cases it depended also on people, but mostly museum workers know history too good to know that whenever you collaborate, you will eventually, most likely, be repressed. And it is a one-way ticket also. You need to know that.
I'm curious if the museums in Ukraine. Sorry, yours.
You mentioned evacuation of artworks and to what places you move them. It's other museums in Ukraine, some specific storages, because it requires special conditions, and also how it regulated on a governmental level, because there is always a question how to return these items back.
Well,
and how you deal with this?
One of the first of all, this is a classified information, so I cannot tell you where it is taken. I can tell you that it is in Ukraine, and the location has to fit certain criteria. We also what we do when we decide, like our museum, for example, we store in 4 different locations.
I can understand.
Yeah, and there will be more. So you should divide your eggs in different baskets, because any, like, you see, Lviv is constantly, Lviv is almost Poland, but missiles fly there, by the way. Like missiles and drones, sometimes they go straight to Poland and they go back to Ukraine. And as drones go to Romanian territory, like more and more often right now. So there is an idea that maybe soon they will be just launching missiles to western territories of Ukraine that will go through Romania or through Moldova and just will land there. They can do that. I think that they are already capable of doing that. So there is no safe space. No, we don't, and it's not like we have many bunkers -4 floors, like, we are using whatever assets we have, and it's not very, it doesn't give us insurance. We have to assess the risk, we have to constantly, like when we choose the location, we need to look around to see first if there are any police, special forces or something around. Then if there is something connected with heating or energy or electricity or water supply, that can be another type of target. Then you need to look at the warehouses of food, because that is also one of the targets that they constantly. Then it is good not to have any medical hospitals, something like that, because it's also a target. So you need to find some place that there is nothing like that. There is no port, there is no storage of grain, there is a long list of what you shouldn't have around. And that is how you decide. Conditions are not good, so that's it. But it's we need to make lower risks. Let it, it will be covered with mold in 10 years. Well, we will have a huge mold problem, and we will need a lot of conservators from around the world to come to Ukraine and to help us to fight the consequences of these storage conditions. But at least we will have all of these pieces. They will physically exist. So now conditions is not like we're looking for perfect storage area with heating control and yeah.
I'm curious if the museums continue having, the organization and the management of the museums. Like, are you talking amongst the museums in Ukraine? Or you continue following? Each one, I guess, has its own management protocols. I'm curious to what extent is that collaboration or dialogue.
Well, we are actually we're kind of creating this as we go. So it is like an ongoing process, and we're trying to develop protocols. We're trying to develop methodologies and to share. But it's every museum is their own story.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it will be interesting case study at some point. And with the returning, what you asked about the problem of returning goods, returning artworks. When it's in Ukraine, there is no problem of returning. There is, actually, it is interesting that our former collection, head of collection department, she's 85 years old now. She worked in the museum for 50 years. And when we've evacuated the first portion, she said, oh no, now we're not gonna get it back from the Western Ukraine. And in Soviet Union, there was the strong division, like there is Western Ukraine and there is a normal Ukraine. In Western Ukraine, even in the libraries, if you wanted to read books that were published in Lviv, you had to go to the international publishing department. So there was this attempt to divide people and not to let us feel that we are one people, that we are one political nation, that we have different histories, but it was there. So she was like, we will not get it, they will not return it to us, but that's part of this Russian narrative that was there. When it comes to other countries of the world, it is a very good question. Like, let's say Germany with far-right parties coming to power. When we say United States, if Trump wins, and then imagine Russia occupies Ukraine, and let's say we deliver our collection to the United States, and then Odessa National Fine Arts Museum, which becomes under the Russian occupation, claims United States institution, somewhere where it's stored, to return the collection to the museum, because it's the museum's collection. And then Trump says, okay, let's do that. Let's give it to Putin, my big friend. And this can happen anywhere in the world. So it is a big question on whom we can actually really trust to preserve our collection in worst case, in the case of unlikely events. Yes. So that's in short question.
I just wanted to say that it's actually very inspiring and also shocking what you do now, and that you find the energy and motivation to keep making these acts of life, because you literally organize work on ruins when it's not a metaphor. And I hope you will keep finding energy and motivation to move somewhere.
Thank you.
On a similar note, if I just very briefly, my experience with museums in Ukraine has been they're very quick to preserve the sense of identity. They know what's under attack and they know what's at stake. And not having been to the museum where you work, it seems like you're doing the same kind of important work. So thank you.